Hello, good evening, and welcome back. With America finally reaching a unanimous bipartisan agreement about standing up for Hong Kong, we now have a data leak which confirms what we all knew anyway, but has finally made its way onto the BBC. Data leak reveals how China brainwashes Uyghurs in prison camps. So these are the Muslims who are detained, tortured, held against their will in Western China in order to get them to conform to the proper Chinese Communist Party propaganda on towards their ideals. This has been going on for quite a while now. You could trace it back to Mao Zedong, essentially, to re-educate people. And if you want to talk about people being held in concentration camps, no, it's not on the American-Mexico border. It's in China for the Uyghur Muslims. Whether they're ethnically Chinese or not is down to how you wish to define culture and ethnicity. But I would say, no, not really. They're closer to Turkish, if anything. Maybe you want to go Mongolia, I suppose. But it is what it is and is happening at the moment. It's been shown before. I would say the most common one, or the most frequent one, the most recent one before this would have been Falun Gong practitioners. Falun Gong was something that was supported by the CCP as it's sort of like Tai Chi, as a way of being healthy, extending your life expectancy, and of course costing China less in healthcare. All sounds great. Until Deng Xiaoping realised, hang on, there seem to be more people who join in Falun Gong than are members of the Chinese Communist Party. This may very well be a threat, even though they seem to be very peace-loving and not causing any harm. They're just old people in a park at 6 a.m. Sunday mornings. But nonetheless, they had to go. So, after a few false flag attempts, they finally said, yeah, well, all this violence is being caused by Falun Gong practitioners, therefore we are outlawing Falun Gong, and anybody caught practicing it will be taken away. Funnily enough, in a morbid sense of humour, I suppose, that because Falun Gong is so good for you and does actually boost your health, these Falun Gong practitioners were then taken away for their organs to be harvested. Yes, the biggest black market trade of organs comes out of China, particularly because they take it upon themselves to attack their own people and take away their organs against their will, which is why it's organ harvesting instead of donating. And because the Falun Gong practitioners are the healthiest of all, they are the prime targets for organ harvesting to take place. After all, the Chinese Communist Party doesn't seem to care about human rights at all. Some would say that the most dangerous job to have in China at the moment is to be a human rights lawyer, because then you're put through the same rigmarole as the people that you're defending. So, leaked documents detail for the first time China's systematic brainwashing of hundreds of thousands of Muslims in a network of high-security prison camps. And yes, this is something Donald Trump is actually going against. So you might say, oh, what about his Muslim ban? It's like, oh, as in the 7 countries that he put a 90-day moratorium on to try and see what was happening before letting those people back in. And you say, oh yeah, but Muslim ban. It's like, well, 7 out of 47 majority Muslim countries. Not quite seeing it. And now he's standing up for the Muslims in China. It almost seems as if it isn't to do with being Muslim. But anyway, let's not let logic get in the way of your feelings, hey? The Chinese government has consistently claimed the camps in the far western Xinjiang region offer voluntary education and training. But official documents seen by BBC Panorama show how inmates are locked up, indoctrinated and punished. China's UK ambassador dismissed the documents as fake news. The leak was made to the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, which has worked with 17 media partners, including BBC Panorama and The Guardian newspaper in the UK. Don't care about their biases here, they're actually onto a good point. The investigation has found new evidence which undermines Beijing's claim that the detention camps, which have been built across Xinjiang in the past 3 years, are for voluntary education purposes to counter extremism. About 1 million people, mostly from the Muslim Uyghur community, are thought of being detained without trial. And they say without trial, but what would China say constitutes a trial? Well, offering them alcohol, and if they don't take it, then they're clearly a Muslim and clearly have to be taken in. Offering them to eat pork, for example. Oh no, clearly a Muslim, clearly need to be taken in for education. Or if they to stop them from praying 5 times a day. In that case, if someone wants their privacy, clearly a Muslim, clearly got to be taken away for re-education. And then you have these communities, these Uyghur communities, with people from mainland China pushed into them in order to act as police, as Stasi, if you will, in order to spy on their own people, because they pledge allegiance more to the party than they do to the people, of course. That's how it works within these authoritarian regimes. So they say, include a 9-page memo sent out in 2017 by Zhu Halun, then Deputy Secretary of Xinjiang's Communist Party and the region's top security official, to those who run the camps. So this is very much from the top. The instructions make it clear that the camps should be run as high-security prisons with strict discipline, punishments, and no escapes. And videos that you see of these people supposedly dancing and clapping and having fun, you can almost often see marks whereby they have been hurt and damaged, and you can see something's not quite right with them mentally, physiologically, emotionally, due to the amount of strict punishment they get. And the thing is, it doesn't just affect them, but it's often, if not always, cross-generational as well. That if you do something wrong, it's going to affect the people you socialise with and also your family. They are also going to be punished. So this memo includes orders to never allow escapes, because it's detention, it is detaining. It's not letting people leave, not to be confused with not letting people in. Increased discipline and punishment of behavioural violations, because what the CCP says goes, which is why they've been rewriting the Ten Commandments as well. And you can only be a Christian if you follow how the CCP have rewritten the Bible as well, and you have to have their CCP propaganda within your church instead of just worshipping God and using Jesus. Not that you should worship the idols of Jesus, because worshipping false idols. Anyway, that's just one of the ways that the Catholics kind of break one of the Ten Commandments. But they were a bit touchy about that. They're a bit touchy about other things, but that's a completely different video. Anyway, promote repentance and confession. So, confessing to things that you haven't done, it's very much a witch hunt, that your confession then validates the reason that you're there in the first place. But of course, that's the only way out. Make remedial Mandarin studies the top priority, to be more ethnically Chinese. Encourage students to truly transform, because you were clearly evil beforehand, and ensure full video surveillance coverage of dormitories and classrooms free of blind spots. Very much Big Brother. There is no way for them to hide. And it gets worse, because everything that they do is micromanaged. What do I mean by that? Well, the student should have a fixed bed position, fixed queue position, fixed classroom seat, and fixed station during skills work, and it is strictly forbidden for this to be changed. Even more than that, they implement behavioural norms and disciplinary requirements for getting up, roll call, washing, going to the toilet, organising and housekeeping, eating, studying, sleeping, closing the door, and so forth. Everything is micromanaged to the utmost degree, even worse than the military, even worse than something that you choose to go into. So, this is obviously to destroy the person's spirit and rebuild them as the CCP wish, so much so that they're just brainwashed by then and can't think for themselves, because you can't have individual thought in a communist society. So, now that I mentioned this scale and how many people, one document says it's 15,000 people from southern Xinjiang were sent to the camps over the course of just 1 week in 2017. That's why they say it's over 1 million people. Sophie Richardson, the China director at Human Rights Watch, said the leaked memo should be used by prosecutors. This is an actionable piece of evidence documenting a gross human rights violation, she said. I think it's fair to describe everyone being detained as being subject at least to psychological torture, because they literally don't know how long they're going to be there. But, unfortunately, as is always the case with these things, when a government inflicts damage upon their own population, nobody outside gives a shit. It's only when they then reach over into other countries that there is then some sort of national outrage. So Hong Kong is kind of on the cusp there, and if China does decide to go in properly militaristically instead of just shooting 2 protesters on individual occasions who were then saved by immediate medical care, but if they do decide to continue with their bridge or their tunnel into Hong Kong and bring tanks through it, the same as they want to do with Thailand, Taiwan, or Chinese Taipei, then it's far more likely there will be outrage, although they are trying to do it softly with their created islands in the South China Sea, the 9-dash line, just to say, oh, we've had it since ancient times. And that also then goes into Nepal and Tibet. But as you can see from this photo here, when I mentioned about ethnically Chinese, would you categorize these people as ethnically Chinese? Personally, no. They're much more Kurdish, Turkish, that kind of area, because they're so western of China. But, of course, how did China respond to this, seeing as they'll never accept blame or anything like that? They say, Chinese ambassador to the UK, Liu Xiaoming, said the measures had safeguarded local people and there had not been a single terrorist attack in Xinjiang in the past 3 years. The region now enjoys social stability and unity among ethnic groups. People there are living a happy life with a much stronger sense of fulfillment and security. Oh, you've got to laugh or you're going to cry, haven't you? Living a happy life? Well, clearly not. I mean, how much happiness can you have when you're going to be beaten every day? A much stronger sense of fulfillment, full of dread, sure, and security. Yes, they have a very strong sense of security. I suppose I can agree with that. But when they say there had not been a single terrorist attack, it's like, I've forgotten the Polish gentleman now, just saying, I like my zeros. How many Islamic refugees? 0. How many terrorist attacks? 0. I like my zeros. And how many radical Polish people have launched terror attacks or blew themselves up in America? 0. But anyway, in total disregard of the facts, some people in the West have been fiercely slandering and smearing China over Xinjiang in an attempt to create an excuse to interfere in China's internal affairs, disrupt China's counterterrorism efforts in Xinjiang, and thwart China's steady development. China is declining, thankfully, even though they have embraced more free market capitalistic endeavours, economically speaking, but not ideologically speaking, as they have to still pledge allegiance to the CCP, and they have to weave their way in and out as one big monolith, that all their ideas are run by the CCP, and they can't speak badly about Xi Jinping, that's why Winnie the Pooh is banned, and so on. China is still losing ground, given that their human rights violations are becoming global now, so people don't wish to do business with them, and then with the trade war between China and the US, that is definitely having a very detrimental effect, thankfully. If only Australia can also push them out of interfering in their internal politics, then we'd have a win-win. But Australia is much more linked to the East than it is to the West, at least economically speaking. So, as China says, yes, this seems to be very strongly counter-terrorist, but you must also imagine then, what's the point in doing what they're doing? It is in order to strike fear on anybody doing anything else than they want them to do, which is terrorism in and of itself, to further political endeavours as well. So if you want to talk about who is actually committing terrorism here, it's clearly the Chinese Communist Party. So the irony, of course, and there is always projection, but even if Liu Xiaoming didn't believe what he was saying, he knows that he has to, otherwise he's going to be brought down by that terror as well. The Red Scare from within China, if you will. So it's not that they're scared they're going to be infiltrated by the Reds, but they know they already are. But as always, let me know what you think down below. Is it too late to stop this from happening? Or is it about time people knew about it and can then choose to boycott China completely? And then how will China respond? Will they take a line down? Will Xi Jinping finally be overthrown and a new government put in place? Or will they retaliate with military capabilities? Let me know. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. So thank you very much for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, have a wonderful week and stay happy.